Hey guys, it's been a bit of a lazy morning. Thank God I've actually managed to have a little bit of rest. Yeah, absolutely loving every second of it. Hope you're all really well. Hope you're rested as well, although I doubt that very much. With the way that things are so fast paced, you virtually have to be a robot in order to do anything, or completely annulled from any feelings and understanding of your true nature. So, I made a video about like sex and the way that we treat each other, and that's all. I've made a few videos basically, and at the moment they're pretty incoherent, as in I'm just throwing ideas out there and all over the show, and it's going to be like that for a while. But soon, hopefully one day within the next couple of years, I'll be able to get like a board and start to explain things and really break things down so people can have a better understanding and a background of it. Otherwise it just looks it can look a bit arrogant or conceited, or that I've got a funny view or something. But it's really not like that. It's just a case of, trying to accept things for their simplistic beauty and what they are, basically, in a scientific manner. And that obviously leads to the spiritual world and God as well. I mean, they're all exactly the same thing, and the physicians, quantum physicists now are all recognizing that and finding their way back to source. I mean, a lot of these people are really eminent people, and they've got very open minds and quite fun and creative people as well. They make me or others look completely mundane, frankly, with their wackiness, but that's kind of how you need to be in order to understand things. I think Albert Einstein said imagination is the sort of key to everything, because without that you've got nothing, and that's the bit that lives between the paradox, the ability to critical think, and not just even between the paradox, in and around it as well. So yeah, imagination is everything. So you need to be rested, and you need to be free from micro thinking, which is like a narrowing of the field. Most of this seems to happen with the media and gossip, which is essentially the same thing. It came from the feudal system originally. It came from life, obviously. That's what people do. Somebody says something, somebody does something, everybody else emulates and copies because of the social ramifications not to. Basically, you don't want to be ostracized. That's the one of the, probably the most feared thing, is to, regardless of whatever the individual is or whatever the individual isn't, or however they conduct themselves, they're worried about being ostracized from the group, because essentially we need each other. We're to make tools and do things and progress in life. Of course, that's being annulled to a certain degree now with the moving on of AI and the ostracization of the individual in entirety, basically. So we're basically going to be rendered inept, although we're kind of more or less that way already, as we've given ourselves up willingly or otherwise to pathology and fantasy, which has never been more extreme, that bipolar approach to everything. So yeah, it started, all the way back, gossip, blah blah blah, the tribal things and that sort of thing. In order to, to remain alive, you would have to be part of the tribe. Then it moved into the feudal system, and the feudal system obviously was, as I don't know if you know or not, but in history, like, it was the barons, the landowners, the lords, etc., etc., and the taxation system that was created from that. So yeah, that would have been gossip in those days for the poor people and the wealthy, and that just filtered down through society and the disparity there. And then as we move on through so-called democracy, but it was democracy, and democracy is a wonderful thing. It's everything. All these institutions and everything that we have are worth fighting for and keeping in place. Not fighting in the sense of going to war, but in the sense of using your brain in order to debate and overcome and love and give your way to returning to self, and returning to self institutions that were made on the hard self and bloodshed, which is not good, because that's feeding the devil. which is another story about food and sacrifice, and that's sort of gone around all the way through our history of the world. And anyway, basically it's all about the individual taking back his or her individual power, and the changes happen within. All the changes happen within. Nothing happens externally. So I can sit here and tell you blue in the face about X, Y, and Z. I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you scientifically. I can prove it to you otherwise, and I'll probably go about my way to do these sorts of things to help people understand, or to try and break it down in layman's terms so that people can understand in a way that actually helps them and doesn't fill them up full of bullshit, basically. The way back to homeostasis, the way back to peace, the way back to a safe environment and a healthy environment for all is through the individual. So one has to accept what they're bitter and resentful about by releasing that through speaking their truth, and in all aspects of their life, and releasing it through meditative and cumulative processes like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really, really good, mindfulness, rest, lots and lots of rest and relaxation and downtime free of all stimulus. And it's amazing how quickly you can actually, in a sort of unsafe environment, you can create a safe environment, a safeguarded environment for yourself. Even if you're on your own in a desperate situation like what I'm in now, for example, you have to do it, because if you don't, you go bark raving crazy. Simple as that. And find your place to rest and actually be able to do whatever you need to do, whether it's cry, shout, scream, laugh. Be free to understand and allow the body to convulse in its way that it wants to move, and be free to stretch and be out there in nature and actually make a difference of understanding of self. So if you do these things and you do the critical thinking, it's very, very simple. And why we've become so confused is because we've been constantly bombarded with too much information. And honestly, it doesn't even matter what the information is, whether it's right or wrong, but too much. It's better if it's right, obviously, but 99.9% of it probably isn't, by hook and crook. And that information, too much information drives you crazy. And so the television, for example, is the worst thing. People think it's the internet and the social media and everything, and that's exacerbated everything and blown it up. And the internet is like a nuclear bomb, but it's also a good platform for people that are educated, that understand how to make their way through the minefield. But if you don't have a grounding, if you don't have a basis of education and understanding that is really deep rooted, then or you're in a place where you're constantly overworked, which is for the most of us, we've got too much information, we're constantly overworked, we haven't got any mind space or bandwidth to actually comprehend things anymore. It is not good, I had a French teacher at school that used to say, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid," and that's exactly what the human needs. Otherwise, it becomes unwell by default. So, however, complicated we are, and however capable we are, and however wonderful we are, and if we work together, that would certainly be shown, in a good, healthy environment, and we would achieve, exponentially more than what we do currently in this sort of race to the bottom of everything. But it will show up, these things will whatever way you go about it, eventually it comes back to the same thing. Everything cycles, right? So it's going to show us, we're going to find out the truth, and the truths are coming out now. So, and there's nothing to fear. It is a story of resilience, but it's a bloody hard way of going about it. If we weren't doing these 10 things incessantly over and over and over again to hurt ourselves, and all the evil that we can possibly do in every which way we can possibly manage it, basically out of fear, because we don't know how to manage our love. And so we end up pathologized, or we start out pathologized as children. We're born essentially able to kill, but it's superfluous to us. We're at the head of the food chain, so much so that we eat our food out of shrink wrapped packaging. It's pointless. But people, although they're eminently aware of it, they haven't put the processes together. But so the reason for why you don't put the processes together is because you fill your time with the television, you fill your time with sport, competition, you fill your time with emulatory things which you assume that are real based on the reality of life, which couldn't be further from the truth. And basically that just confuses you more. So you watch television, for example, and every single story and every single thing is based around extensive drama, which is pathology and basically violence and sex and all the horrible stuff, and then fantasy of that. So you see extremes all the time, and you're constantly pushed through the extremes over and over and over and over again, and you're just a habitual monster, really, a habitual disease, and you don't understand, and you can't understand, because you're hooked into this addictive way of thinking. And it's just a madness. It's a complete it's a complete madness. It's a complete kind of like psychotic way of living and being and thinking and socializing and suggesting. So you need to critical think. You need to be able to come back to source and understand that you're way more than that, and really you're just a child that wants to order things and make things nice and pleasant and decent, and be able to create a safe environment. And the adult is the best person to do that, to order things and make things in a way which is healthy for the individual. Like, people talk about being selfish. I've never met a selfish person, because if there's a selfish person out there, they would genuinely do what's right for them. And if I wish that everybody becomes selfish, they're not. They're just playing a stupid game, like Shakespeare said. 7 acts of ages, and everybody's acting. They're acting to be socially accepted, but what are they acting to actually really do? And if you break it down, they're just following a perverted cycle of psychotic nonsense. Big words. Pretty frightening, huh? But it seems to be what the case is. Anyway, so before I frighten people into the oblivion of death, and they all run away and want to commit suicide at 1 million light years per second, or whatever is intrinsically possible or not. But yeah, basically, sorry for the misery, and it does seem pretty bad, but the best thing to do is accept it and venerate it, let out that bitter and resentful crap that we're all carrying around. That a lot of people are also stuck in, they're completely dead in the soul, and they've completely succumbed one way or another, either at childhood or adulthood, or both, or through transition. With the devil, and that's desperate, because in fact most people are probably like that now. They don't feel anything, they don't know, they don't have that feeling anymore. They have it, it's been killed out of them. It's like a dark, heavy blanket, and it's so complicated to understand certain things that you probably don't even really need to understand on this earth, in this one-dimensional realm in society, that when you're in the spiritual realm, most people obviously don't go there. They don't understand it because it's too complicated with their basic life, and it's easier just to shun it and say, hey, there's nothing there. But when you really realise that everything is happening there, and that's what's really affecting you. I will say this, and I'll go into this, all of these things that I'm gibbering on about now into great details. I'll go through, like I say, to prove it to you, to show it to you, so that you can understand in layman's terms and scientific terms exactly what I'm talking about. Because it is all pretty simple, really. And Einstein also said that don't explain anything to anyone until you understand it simply yourself. So maybe I should take that view, and maybe at the moment, maybe that's why people get confused with these sorts of things, or they get uneasy with these sorts of things, because it is quite out there, or seemingly out there, compared to their one-dimensional world. So upshot is, if we want a good life, we need to be healthy. So we need to treat ourselves in a healthy way, and that means mind, body and soul. You can't just go out there and make some money and say it's all cool. It doesn't work like that, because it won't be all cool. It'll be an all cool great tragedy. You have to do all the things. So every little section and nuance of your life requires the amount of effort that money does, and so on and so forth. And if you can do that, for example, if you can go out and, if you're a builder, you build a house. You don't build it on a slope with no foundations and this and that, and you don't measure and so on and so forth. No, you have to go out there and you have to do everything. You have to measure again, and make sure all your calculations are correct, and make sure that you're doing the right job, and then you build the house, and then the house stays there forever. You have to do this in every section of your life. And forgive me for saying this, but this is why people don't like the Bible, because the Bible, in my opinion, whether you believe in God or not, I just don't give a monkeys, or what God you believe in, that's absolutely fine. And that's in the most genuine way. The people, they shun the Bible because they're like, oh, this guy, he's too good. You know, who can possibly be like that? Well, do you know what? It's the easiest thing to be. It's what you are by nature. It's just you're frightened to be like that. You're frightened to be like that, because if you are, you'll be ostracized, because your family's not like that. But they're frightened to be like that. So we're all frightened to be what we really are. So we're not selfish. Show me a selfish man, and I will give you all my worldly possessions instantly. I've basically given them up all already, but hey, don't tell anyone. So yeah, Diogenes said, find me a good man. You might want to check out Diogenes. And he said, I can't remember exactly what he said now. What did he say? Find me a good man, and I'll basically stop telling people about, you know, what's what and this and that. He was looking for a good man, but there wasn't any. But the good man is only a man that is selfish. Good man is only a man that is true to himself, which is selfish. But to be true to yourself and to be selfish, truly selfish, you'd be good for everyone and everything. It's incredible, right? And this is the point that no one seems to be brave enough to move towards, ultimately, in a succinct manner, so that they carry that out in every part of every section that they do. And when and if they do that, they will have more money, they'll have more freedom, they'll have more honesty, they'll have more dignity, they'll have more better orgasms, they will have better relationships. Basically every single life will be cataclysmically better in every possible way that anyone could ever possibly understand, imagine, or come to terms with. It just will be unfathomably good, much like it is unfathomably bad now. But it will supersede that by I can't. There aren't words. Infinitely. This is proved, and I can prove this to you in the simplest of ways. Like I've said to you, there's 10 possible things that you can do to each other to create misery and shit, and disharmony and discord and an unhealthy environment. 10, only 10, and the rest is infinite perfection. So essentially, we've been tricked. We've been tricked by these 10 things, and we just can't get out of this cycle of the trick. That brings me to the devil, and I'll go into that in great detail as well one day. No one wants to believe that. They're arse puckers, and they think, oh yeah, this guy, this is all too much, and blah blah blah. But it's as real as rocking horse shit. No, it's as real as real horse shit, and it's all there. So as we travel through this incredible heaven of a place that has become hell through our choices, or has been allowed to become hell through illusion and our choices. For all, when I speak now, I'm talking to the man at the top that created or thought they created something in some ideology that they believe. And I'm talking to the man all the way through life, of all ages, that has been, of all religions, of all creeds, of all colours. Once we understand this in layman's terms, because we seem to have a tendency, an omnipotent tendency to want to understand, which is good because we were made in the eyes of God, but we take this a little bit too far with arrogance and pride and greed and all the avarice that we have. We will begin to, we will actually nuance and completely change. The tables will turn and life will be incredible. Anyway, with that, lots and lots and lots of love. And yeah, remember that the odds are in your favour. So go out there and get after it. All the love in the world. Cheers. Bye.